Good morning again, grade 12s. Mr. Jacobs here again from the Buffalo City Metro Municipality District. I'm here again to discuss the topic of question 2 in paper 1, which is our cash flow statement. Now, unlike question 1 of paper 1, you are guaranteed that the cash flow statement will be there in the exam. So ensure that you master it and make sure you get the marks. The full marks is possible for question 2. Now question 2 covers cash flow statements, financial indicators, as well as notes to the financial statements. Okay? Also very important, grade 12s, remember you are writing your accounting paper 1 final examination for this year on the 14th, very important, 14th of November. The paper duration is a total of 2 hours and you are writing in the morning. So don't come to the exam venue in the afternoon and think you are writing in the afternoon. You are writing in the morning. Very important, grade 12s, be there early at the exam venue. Why do we have to be there early? Being there early ensures that you are at least not having any anxiety, pressure or stress right before you write, because when you have that, normally you tend to forget what you have practiced and mastered. Now the cash flow statement, grade 12s, will have the cash flow itself, financial indicators as I said. However, with this one, it will be the calculations to the financial indicators as well as the notes to the financial statement. In question 1, notes are there, financial indicators are there. Also here in question 2, financial indicators are there as well as notes. Okay? And then the notes to the financial statements are normally covered in question 2 of paper 1. The exception, however, is the notes to the financial statements, which can also be covered in question 1. As I said, financial indicators are also covered in question 1 in order to complete a financial statement. And in question 3, they will ask you then the analysis and interpretation of financial statements using financial indicators. The mark allocation for question 2 in paper 1 ranges between 35 to 45 marks. If you look at the maximum mark of 45 here, 45 divided by 150 marks gives you up to 30%, meaning that is a level 2 pass by itself from one question in accounting if it's 45 marks in the exam. Okay, so therefore it's very, very, very important, this question. Okay. Another tip that I want to give to you guys is to read the question paper. Hence, you need to be there early so that you have enough reading time. You can't rock up after 9 and expect to master the paper. You need to be there early so that you read through the question paper. But don't just read the question paper in isolation. Read it together with the answer book to see what has already been given to you, what has been redacted or removed from the answer book that you do not have to answer those ones, okay, during your reading time. Start with the question, very important, that you are the most comfortable or confident in. Why? Because sometimes when you start with any random question that you are not comfortable with, you are losing time, you get demotivated, and it might derail the entire process of you completing that question paper. There's no instruction at all in the paper that says that you have to answer question 1, then question 2, then question 3, then question 4. If question 2 is your strongest question, you start with that question. You make sure you finish it, because once it is your favorite question, you tend to answer it fast, and then also you tend to answer it correctly, and you tend to also answer it below the designated time that's given for the question. Then therefore, if for example the time is 30 minutes for question 2 and you are able to answer it in 20 minutes, guess what? You have an extra 10 minutes left. That 10 minutes that you have left, you then use and save it almost for the following question that you might find a bit more challenging, that you will need more time with. Okay? Also, guys, for question 2, know your format of all of your notes. For example, in the statement of cash flow rather, there is one note that you are being asked, the cash generated from operating activities. Know the format or the layout of that note to the cash flow statement. Knowing the format, grade 12s, will prevent you from again receiving negative marking. Negative marking is things such as foreign or misplaced items where they subtract marks from you if you put incorrect information in the note or the statement itself. Okay? Another tip when it comes to question 2. The format for note number 1, which I said earlier on, cash generated from operations, is very important. All formats of notes to the financial statements are important, as I said with question 1 as well. Now, especially the new ones, because they tend to focus a lot on the ordinary share capital note and the retained income note. Know your format, know what belongs in the ordinary share capital note and the retained income note. The layout also of the full cash flow statement is also vitally important. For example, you must know what goes under your cash effect from operating activities. You must know what goes underneath your investing activities. You must know what goes in your financing activities and what goes in by your net change in cash and cash equivalents. Again, another tip, there's always going to be a formula sheet for you at the end of the question paper. You are provided the formula sheet, right, at the end of the question paper to help or to assist you with financial indicator type questions, right? You need to ensure, grade 12s, that you know the names of these indicators. If the question is asking you to calculate the net asset value per share, you cannot use the return on average shareholders equities formula, because what will happen? You will get 0 marks for the entire question, even if you calculated the return on average shareholders correctly, but that was not what you were asked to calculate. Okay? Again, more tips. You should also know the grouping of the indicators. You must know what indicators falls under your liquidity ratios, what falls under your solvency, etc. Because choosing an incorrect formula for a calculation will then result, as I said, no marks being awarded to you in the exam. Okay? When it comes to accounting, we know that we are only given a total of 2 hours to answer the 150 mark paper. So time management, grade 12s, as your teachers have been telling you throughout the year, is very important. We cannot be spending an hour and a half on one question when you still have 3 other questions that is waiting for you. That's why I said earlier on, make sure that you start with the question you are the most comfortable with or confident in, because that will boost you to be able to complete the entire question within the allocated time. Okay? Like, for example, with this extract here, you will see that question 2 is there on the instructions. There is the topic that is being assessed in question 2, notes to financial statements, cash flow statement, and financial indicators. The mark for this question was 40 marks, and then the time that they are giving you is 30 marks. So you need to make sure you then focus within that 30 minutes that you are able to finish that question in order for you to be able to move on to these other questions, so that you are able to answer the entire paper and leave no blank spaces. Okay? Next one. Ensure that you have the correct and enough stationery, guys. It's so important. You might think it's not important, but going to the venue with one pencil, for example, if you are asked, if you're going to be using rather a pencil to answer your script, right? What if the pencil is always breaking the point? You always have to sharpen it. That sharpening that you are doing is robbing time from your writing process. So have enough pencils, sharpen them beforehand, and make sure that you have everything you need when you step into the venue. Also, as I was saying earlier on, be at the venue early in order to prevent any panic or anxiety from creeping in, okay? Because you need to be relaxed when you're answering your paper, so that you are able to think clearly and not leave any question unanswered or blank. Okay? The common calculation that we get in the cash flow statement will be calculations such as dividends paid, taxation paid, purchase of fixed assets, sale or disposal of fixed assets, an increase or a decrease in our loan or non-current liabilities, increase or decrease in our fixed deposit, proceeds from shares that have been issued to the public, and also repurchase of shares. Now, I want us to take out this whole idea of how we were doing things in question 1 when it comes to paper 1, right? Normally, things are, an asset is an asset, it's positive, a liability is a negative, but in this case here, we are dealing with cash flow. We want to assess to see if you know the flow when it comes to money. For example, looking at those keywords I've underlined, the word paid means what? We have what? We have spent money as a business. When we spend money as a business, the effect will be an outflow or a negative. When it comes to the cash flow, we have spent money to pay dividends to our shareholders. The same with tax. When we pay tax, we are not getting money, but we are spending it. Therefore, when we are spending it, what is happening? We are what? Having an outflow of money. The same with the word purchase. Purchase is not just another word for what? Buying. When you are buying something, what happens? You are spending money to buy that fixed asset, even though the asset is a positive for a business. However, it has a negative effect on the money of the business. The opposite happens now when we are disposing or selling an asset. We are getting money for the sale of that asset. Therefore, that will then be what? An inflow of money when it comes to our cash flow statement. The loan as well. Remember, when we are dealing with loans, what happens here? Loans can either increase or they can decrease, right? When you are increasing a loan, you are increasing a liability in question 1. However, in question 2, by increasing the loan, what is happening? You are basically here receiving money from the bank. Therefore, the increase in the loan will then be a positive when you're comparing it from the previous year to the current year. Okay. However, the opposite happens when you are decreasing a loan. When you are decreasing a loan, what happens? You have to pay to decrease that loan. That is why in this case here, it will be considered an outflow when you are spending money to decrease that loan. Okay. Fixed deposits works the opposite as a loan. Okay. When you are increasing a fixed deposit, what happens? You have to spend money to increase it. Therefore, it's considered a what? An outflow. But when you are dealing with a decrease of a fixed deposit, what happened? The only way it can decrease is when it matures. And when it matures, the bank or the financial institution where you made the fixed deposit will then be paying the money into your bank account that you can then use when it comes to your cash flow. Okay? Proceeds from the sale of shares. When we are issuing shares to the public, we sell it to them, they pay us an amount of money. That will always be an inflow of money. There will never be an outflow of money when we issue shares to the general public. Okay? Also, repurchase of shares. There's the key word again. Purchase means to what? To buy. Okay? Buying back of shares, you are what? Spending money. Now, when you are spending money, that is considered a what? An outflow of money when it comes to our cash flow. And then the very one at the end will then be the net change in cash and cash equivalent. You compare your cash at the beginning with the balance at the end of the year, the cash, you then see was the change a positive change or a negative change. Okay, we'll delve more deeply into examples type of questions when it comes to our calculations or the common calculations in the cash flow statement. Also, the common type of calculations when it comes to financial indicators, you see things such as current ratio, asset-based ratio, debt equity ratio, the ROTCE or the return on total capital employed, the return on shareholders' equity, the earnings per share, dividends per share, net asset value per share. Those are common ones. It doesn't mean that the others will not be asked. Hence, I put a note here that states any financial indicator can be asked from the from the formula sheet at the back of your paper, right? The only one that they do not ask normally will be the break-even point, which is going to be in question paper 2. When you look at the example, dividends paid, this is the formula. You have to use the opening balance, which is your shareholders for dividends of last year. Then you add your interim, or what we call also your paid dividend for this year during the year. You add them together to get your dividends paid. Okay? Remember, we said paid, therefore the final answer will always be an outflow of money or a negative effect on our bank. Okay. Also, another method of doing it is again starting with the opening balance, and then you add your total dividends, dividends plural, both the interim and the final dividend. However, we are only looking for money that was spent, so you have to subtract the final dividend at the end of the year. Here's an example that I've used. Opening balance here, 390,000, which is from the previous year, 2022. Then we have to add the what? The interim dividend of this year. You will see it's not given, there's an adjustment. You will then have to use this adjustment here at the end where it states interim dividend of 25 cents per share were paid on the 30th of April 2023. Therefore, I put 25 over 100 there to indicate the dividend itself with 1,000,000 shares. 1,000,000 shares comes from the 850 at the beginning plus the 150 additional shares. Also, there were repurchases made, but they said these shares qualify for what? For interim dividends. Therefore, you cannot subtract them. And that's how you get the answer of 640. This is an outflow. Therefore, it normally is a negative. Okay? Then the next one, when it comes to taxation pay, this is a tip I've given my kids at my school. You need to do a grid like this or a table like this where you are stating debit or credit, 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 right? Opening balance debit, closing balance debit. Credit opening balance, credit closing balance. If the opening balance is debit, it means you'll start off with a negative at SARS. And if the closing balance is debit, it means you overpaid. Okay? And then when the opening balance is a credit, it means you are owing SARS money, which you will pay at the beginning of the year. And if the closing balance is a credit, you have not paid that amount. Hence, you will have to subtract it. Here is the formula again. Opening balance plus income tax for the year minus your what? Your closing balance. Or you can also plus the closing balance. Hence I put here positive or negative. It depends on the type of balance that you have. Okay, here's an example. Grade 12s. 53,200 is your opening balance, which comes from here. It's under your payables. Therefore, it's a credit balance. Therefore, it's positive. You're going to pay that amount at the beginning. Then the next thing you're looking for is your income tax, which you get from your statement of comprehensive income, 497,400. And then the closing balance, you can see it is here under your receivables. Therefore, it's a debit closing balance. Therefore, you've paid the amount of money. At the end, the final answer is 598,690. Okay? Then we move on to the next one, purchase of or disposal of fixed assets. You're basically going to use your note number 3 of financial statements to calculate this one. Okay, here is a table that I've created. Opening balance, remember here it will just be the carrying value that you're going to add as a positive. Then additions will still be positive, disposals negative, depreciation negative, and then the carrying value at the end is the only one you change the sign for. You will then indicate whether you calculate this one or this one. The signs will remain the same except for the closing balance. Here's an example. The question is the disposal of fixed assets you must calculate. What do you need? You need the carrying value at the beginning. There is it. There you go. Right? Then you have to add the what? The amount of 1702, which is the acquisition or the purchase of fixed assets. There you go. Then you'll have to subtract the next figure, which is 199,900, which is the depreciation. And then, as I said, you will have to subtract the what? The closing balance of fixed assets carrying value. And then you get the total amount of 32,300. Then when it comes to the increase or decrease in loan, remember you just subtract the opening balance from the closing balance. Then you get the figure. You'll compare the two balances. Using the opening balance, you will see clearly in your calculation, is the opening balance bigger or smaller than the closing balance? Then you will know that the balance, that the loan rather have increased or decreased. Then you will know whether it's an in or outflow of money. The same with the fixed deposit. Okay, when it comes to the proceeds from the number of shares issued, you will do the normal calculation, shares issued times the issue price, or you take it directly from the note. Okay? Then repurchase of shares, again, number of shares that is repurchased times the repurchase price, or you take it the number of shares times the average share price plus the amount above the average share price, or take it directly from the two notes and complete it. Okay. Then the net change in cash and cash equivalent is the last part. Here, normally you can use the note as it is here to complete it. You will see here there's positive, negative on both sides here. So the answer can either be positive or negative that you will have to get as the final figure. Okay, for you to get the opening balance, you're going to use the opening balance of cash and cash equivalent. Then you subtract the bank overdraft of last year. To get the closing balance, also you will use the closing balance, closing balance minus the bank overdraft of this year to get the final answer. Okay, here's an example. They ask you to complete the net change in cash and cash equivalents. You are given the cash and cash equivalent at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. So therefore, the 83,500, as you can see, it's here by the opening balance. There's no overdraft, it's zero. Therefore, I just showed there, minus zero, you get a positive 85,300. Then at the end, you have 7.8, which is your closing balance for cash and cash equivalent. You subtract the overdraft, which is 319. You get a final answer as a negative. You're going to use the bottom-up approach or the reverse when you're calculating the net change, the figure here at the top. Okay. When you work in reverse, the sign of the opening balance will then change. So this sign here, it's positive. However, when you work in reverse, you will then change this to a negative, like I've done here. Okay. There is also other calculations that you also need to do. Things such as your financial indicators. You need to name the indicator. Also remember, the name of the indicator itself will then give you the formula if you can't remember it. If you look at earnings per share, EPS, right, you will see earnings, net profit after tax per is divide shares, number of shares in issue at the end. The next one, dividends per share, the same thing, dividends plural, meaning interim plus final dividend. You add them together, you get the final answer. The next one, return of total capital employed. Total capital employed refers to capital used, capital, finances, therefore loans and equity. The next one, the percentage return on average shareholders' equity, percentage times 100, return net profit after tax on to divide average 0.5. Shareholders' equity is the ordinary share capital plus the retained income, the opening and the closing balances. Okay, and then the next one, net asset value per share. Net assets means assets minus liability, and then the value will be in cent, which you will have to multiply by 100 per to divide, and then the number of shares in issue at the end of the year. Okay, and that is the end of my presentation. Grade 12s, good luck for the coming exam. I know you're going to ace it. Goodbye.